Bienvenue à tous, merci de votre participation. Pour écouter notre session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet « Interprétation » et sélectionner le drapeau français. Merci.
On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the African Centre for Cities, Our Future Cities, Surge Africa, and the Red Cross Crescent Climate Centre, we are delighted to welcome you to the Rise Africa 2024 Action Festival. Rise Africa is a platform that brings together thinkers, doers, and enablers to inspire action for sustainable cities. This is our 4th edition of our Rise Africa Action Festival, which brings together insights, practices, and visions from across the continent under this year's theme of Solutions Only, Failures Also. This year's theme provokes us to change the way we view our cities and approach their development, particularly to promote a solutions orientation to our worldview. The festival invites you to embrace different ways of knowing, to seek ways to bridge science, policy, business, and arts in creative ways. It invites you to forge new partnerships, experiment with new concepts and ideas, and drive change in your homes and communities. This year's festival, we are running a social media storm to share how urbanization is happening in Africa, that cities can be centers of possibility, and how we can inspire action for sustainable African cities. Please share these for the days of the festival, including Africa Day, the 25th of May. As is tradition, we invite you to enter this session in a spirit of creativity.
Hello, my name is Gesha Aletta, and my poem is titled, How Can We Be Afraid of the Light? The hour before dawn rouses the birds. They sing their excitement for the light. We toss and turn beneath our covers. We choose sleeping rather than sight. Without resting, there can be no labor. We need the darkness for a season. When the time comes to turn the light on, we're beside ourselves with reasons. Why we can't turn off the beaten path? Why what it asks is maybe decades or centuries away? Why it's too great to bear the burden that change asks? Why the fire and the light are dangerous because of the trails they blaze? He said, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. We want change to seduce us boldly, but only with the lights off. How can we be afraid of the light? How can we hide from the glistening of tears? How can we abandon our efforts and failures? How can we be corralled by our fears? How can we be afraid of the light? How can we shy away from smiling with all our teeth? Why don't we bind our wounds with laughter's balm? How dare we bury our humanity beneath? There's a beating heart in every chest, and it's longing for a chance to run towards the finish line, whether it comes first or last. Hearts aren't swayed by competition to cease beating because of the chorus of other beating hearts. When did we become renegades towards this intuition? Perhaps if we stop trying to conquer, colonize, destroy, dominate, is where winning starts.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session entitled Circular Economy in Cities, an exchange between SMEs and municipalities on upscaling innovative technologies. This session forms part of a 4-part series under a project called Gap Fund Step Up Program, where we are hosting a regional community of practice for a set of cities across the continent. And we have taken the opportunity to host our 3rd session on the Rise Africa Action Festival platform. It's an opportunity to engage with stakeholders beyond local government who are our main audience in the community of practice, to learn and be inspired by other actors in the circular economy space, particularly our SMEs who are doing phenomenal work and who inspire us to transform our cities in various ways. From the video you just listened to, I cannot help but feel excited for the possibility and the range of discussions and connections that will emerge from our session today. It calls us to be creative, to feel, to immerse ourselves in our context and be proud of the African cities that we come from, but also to find solutions that resolve the things we're not happy with in our context. So I would like to first take us through a few housekeeping rules before we officially get started with our session. The first one is we implore you to not disturb those that are presenting by please making sure that you are on mute at all times. They will present and there's ample space for us to have discussion with them afterwards. And then could you please, if you have any questions and would like to engage with us, to please put them in the chat and we will take those questions. And furthermore, please also keep those deep questions for the breakout rooms that we will be having, where we will be deep diving into discussions. And for any other technical issues, also feel free to just throw them in the chat and let us know, and we'll try to address them as best as we can. Lastly, this session will be recorded, so you will be able to get a recorded version of it afterwards so that you can look back on the insights that have been shared. We're going to have a lot of information that's given to us today, so it will be valuable to have this on deck so that you can come back and refer to the insights that our presenters are going to share with you. And then lastly, you're welcome to share about the sessions that you're engaging with on the Rise Africa platform. My colleagues, Zakia, who is in the background doing some tech work and support, will be putting that in the chat. We encourage you to, if you do post about Rise Africa and the sessions that you're attending, to use the hashtags that we have provided. And lastly, we would love to optimize participation in this session. So I would just like to take a minute or two to get us all on board with using our interpretation functions. So this session is being held in both English and French. And what that means for our discussion is that we need to know what language you prefer to engage with us in. So I would like us to take just a minute to do a quick little exercise. If you find your participant bar, where you are able to rename yourself, to please join me in renaming yourself and adding EN for English or FR for French next to your name. This will help us to better identify you and put you in the correct breakout room. We don't want you to be in an only English-speaking room and you're not able to engage. We also don't want you to be in an only French-speaking room and you're not able to engage. So what you then do is, under participants, you just find your name. There are three dots next to there are three dots that are next to your name. When you hover your mouse over it, click those three dots and then click on rename. And you will see your name. You just have to then add EN at the end of it. You can put it in brackets. You can leave it as is. Put it as EN if you are an English-speaking participant and would like to engage in English, or FR if you are a French-speaking participant and would like to engage in French. So you will have seen that my name has changed, and I would like to then remind everyone again what the instructions are, is to rename yourself with either EN or FR next to your name. And so that is by going to your participants list, hovering over your name, clicking on the three dots and selecting rename, and then adding EN for English or FR for French if that's your preferred language of engaging in the session. Let's take a few minutes to allow our participants to do that. I see a whole bunch of you have managed to rename yourselves. Please also feel free to just let us know in the chat if you're struggling to do this so that I can either repeat the questions or find a way to help you to do this. I see a lot of us have managed to rename ourselves. Please put in the chat if you have struggled to do so, and after my first input, I will then come back and repeat this instruction just so that no one gets left behind. So yes, let's get into the session now. Today we are joined by three exciting speakers who I'm super excited to engage with, and you will get to know them better in a moment. But I just quickly want to acknowledge who they are. We are joined by Laura Stanford from the Bug Picture. We're also joined by Elikplim Asilevi from Safisana, as well as Gift Lubele from Kudoti. They are all located across different parts of the continent and working on projects which are replicable across the entire continent. I know a lot of you are very much familiar with circular economy ideas and approaches. And you will know that a lot of what they will be sharing with you is work that can be contextualized and implemented in different regions of the globe. So we have representatives from West Africa in Ghana, from East Africa in Kenya, and from down south here in South Africa. They are going to be sharing with us some perspectives on waste to energy solutions, which is biogas, black soldier flies, as well as tech solutions that help us optimize how we use waste, or rather how we use waste data and information to improve our waste systems. So just to get started, I would like to put us into a little bit of context. I know all of us are familiar with circular economy, but I do see a few new faces. So I do want to take this opportunity to give a quick introductory presentation on what the circular economy is. For those of us that are familiar, please bear with me. This will hopefully just be a reminder and guidance as to what our positioning is on circular economy. So if you just give me a moment to share my screen. There we go. If you are having challenges seeing my screen, please also just shout. So yes, the perspective we're taking on this is right now our world is very much linear, and we have seen so many pockets of circularity emerging and circular solutions emerging. But what we are currently experiencing is we are in a system or a world where we take materials from our environment, we turn them into products, and once we've lost value for them, we turn them into waste, and they reach their end of life. And most times there isn't a plan for what happens to that waste. And that leaves us in a situation where we have a lot of waste that is circulating around the continent. But what the circular economy approach encourages us to do is to rethink this model and to try and see things through a circular perspective. How can we rethink the systems that we have? How can we regenerate and use nature as the driving force behind our production systems? How can we then reduce the amount of materials that we are extracting from the environment and making better use of what's already been extracted by reusing? So how can we take products that are already in circulation, such as my phone or this paper, and keep it in use for as long as is possible through things such as modular design? And then lastly, how can we deal with the waste that is already in circulation by recovering that and giving it new life? And so that leads us to the definition of a circular economy. We have defined the circular economy as a system of resource management, which ensures continuous use of materials, goods, energy, and waste. And it is then, therefore, in an economic system of closed loops in which raw materials, components, and products retain maximum value throughout their entire life cycle. And just some perspective on a framework that was developed by ICLEI Africa, as well as the ICLEI World Secretariat and a number of other organizations who supported through this process and were championing a universal definition for, or rather framework for circular economy, came up with this framework, which is called the 5 Rs. As many of you will know, there are a number of frameworks that are available for helping to guide us when it comes to circular economy. But what this framework does is it implores us to take action. So yes, we have these principles that guide our work, but these are 5 principles that we can lean on to help us make that transition from what I described as the linear economy into a circular economy. And these 5 principles are, as I've mentioned, rethinking, regenerating, reducing, reusing, and recovering. And from today's discussion, we will learn how some of these principles can be achieved. But I also just want to frame us into the African context. This framework was developed to be usable at a global scale, directly created for local governments, but framed in a way that allows other stakeholders to be engaged and to support. But what we realized was that there was a need for like an additive to it to help us see how we can take that framework and contextualize it for the African continent. And so through research and engagement with various stakeholders across the continent, 7 key considerations were developed to help guide us in how we implement this framework. And I won't go through all of them, but I do just want to highlight a few of them that are well aligned with our session today. One of them being the idea of promoting collaboration and appreciative co-learning. This one is very important given that it directly responds to some of the comments that I gave around the framework and it being written for local governments, but being framed in a way that allows it to be taken up by stakeholders outside of local government. And that happens through collaboration and facilitating co-learning. And that is one of the objectives of today's session. The other is around linking these strategies with existing service delivery mandates. As we all know, waste management is a huge challenge across many of our African cities. And one of these being the ability to deliver waste services. And it leads to a lot of the challenges that we are seeing and that our local governments are grappling with and trying to resolve. And so how can we use circular strategies to help us address some of these service delivery mandates and challenges that we're experiencing? The focus of this session being on waste management service delivery. And then the last one being the alignment of circular activities with governance frameworks of their contexts. Our local governments typically have the mandate of delivering services, but also in many cases, either developing strategies and policies or enacting and implementing strategies and policies that are written up by national governments and central governments. And so how do we support local governments who will typically have the implementation roles to align circular perspectives and activities that they see happening on the ground with the frameworks that guide their work? And what that leads us to is today's session. We are hoping that through the 3 speakers that we have brought on board, we'll be able to learn a little bit more about how we can facilitate the transition and how local governments can lead in this regard. One of these being the need for embracing technology and the role that it plays in helping to optimize processes that we have. And so how can we digitize the circular economy for optimization? And so here we have Kudoti, who is a company that is optimizing their circular economy operations by tracking the journey of products, materials, and resources from the source to the end destination. And I won't go into the details. Gift will let us know what work they do at Kudoti and how that relates to circularity and waste. We'll also be hearing about biogas as a waste to energy solution, and particularly here, what we're looking at is how we can divert our organic waste material and biogas being used as a primary energy source for on-site operations, for power generation, for heating and cooling, as well as a range of other things. Its value here being that it helps us to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, to lower our operational costs and to minimize carbon footprint. And our speaker, Elik Plim from Safisana, will be taking us into a deeper dive and understanding around how we can use biogas as a circular economy solution. And then lastly, black soldier fly farming. We have the bug picture here, and Laura will be giving us insights into black soldier fly farming. A lot of the contexts that I've seen on this session are very much advocates for black soldier fly farming, and she will be able to give us insight into what this approach is and the value that it provides. Just quickly, black soldier fly farming can act as black soldier flies can act as waste processors or decomposers by converting organic material into biomass and nutrient-rich excrement called frass. And so I'm going to stop my presentation here and allow our speakers to come on board and share insights from their work. We're going to start with Gift from Kudoti so that we can learn more about his work. So over to you, Gift. Please introduce yourself and share with us your work.
Yeah, thanks for that intro. Pleasure to be here. Really exciting to always be in a room of people that are, I like to say, fighting the good fight. So Yeah, I am Gift from Kudoti. Kudoti has been around for 6 years. We're currently going through a very interesting transformation as an organization, which I think everyone should stay tuned to sort of see what that looks like. I'm going to be sharing with you my screen just around some of the work that we do at Kudoti. But our wonderful facilitator said, that feel free to sort of jump in whenever you have questions. Just maybe help me confirm if you can see my screen on your side.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Yeah, so I just want to start with this. And what you're seeing here is insights from the 2024 Circular Economy Report. And depending on how you look at it, it's both good and bad. The first one being that today the word circular economy has reached megatrend status, which means across discussions, debates, articles, and even concepts, over the years, we're seeing a really strong focus on circular economy. So a lot of people are now starting to understand what circular economy means and what it actually is. What is sad is that though the discussion has reached global status, our way of living hasn't changed, in a sense that globally today circularity is still in decline. So what was recently presented early about us being a society that is a linear society, that's still the case. In fact, the circularity within the world, or the circularity of materials, actually dropped from 9.1 in 2018 rather, to 7.2 in 2023. So that's a 21% drop over the course of 5 years, right? So what we are also seeing, especially in the African continent, is consumption continues to grow. I mean, Africa within the next coming years is predicted to be home to more young people than anywhere in the world. And with a huge influx, or with a huge growth of population, comes huge consumption. And if we are not able to really leverage circularity and understand how we could use it to not only do well for the environment, but as a really good opportunity, we run the risk of actually losing quite a bit. What is quite encouraging is the fact that regulation is starting to speak on this, in a sense that there's new regulation, although some of it is mandatory, some of it is emerging or voluntary. We're starting to see a really strong emphasis on regulation that governments all over the world are putting in place to say you need to start being very responsible for your waste. You need to start tracking and understanding where that waste goes. Such regulation is EPR. There's another one that's quite robust called CSR RD, launched in EU, that affects about 10,000 EU listed companies, with projection to get to about 60,000 companies. Now, it's always important to sort of look at circularity not as a single component, but rather as a component that feeds into sustainability, which is kind of the much bigger, broader term that's being used as well. And what we've seen is we really can't solve what we can't measure, or what we can't even understand. And for understanding, what we need is data. I say sustainability because over the years, we've seen a lot of brands actually greenwash. They share stories about how much waste that they're recycling, about how they're doing from an environmental score point of view, and most of them are actually greenwashing. One such case is H&M, which was facing a law case recently over its wrongdoings, which means they sort of mentioned things that really were not true. Why is this problem quite exciting for me? It's exciting for several reasons. Firstly, it's because it's a very complex problem. It's a wicked problem, I would say. And part of the reason is sustainability, or rather circularity, in our view at Kudoti, is a data problem and not necessarily a human problem. We say this because today 80 to 90% of the impact from the suppliers, or rather the companies, sits within the supply. So if I am an organization and I am making shirts, right, circularity isn't just the final product of the shirt. It's where this shirt was sourced from, the cotton that was collected, and sort of having full traceability of that whole value chain. For me, that's where the power and the ability to then be fully circular would come in. But we understand as well that within supply chain, it's quite difficult to measure and report on sustainability impact, or even trace circularity of materials, right? Because these supply chain partners have different tools. Some of them have very different operations. And so extracting this data can be very, very difficult. So what we at Kudoti sort of do is try to organize verifiable data to accelerate circularity as well as sustainability, purely to help companies be more profitable, because there's still this sort of sense that sustainability is like a feel good, do good initiative. It's actually not a proven valuable or investment worthy transition to make. But we actually don't agree with that. We believe sustainability, circularity, those are some of the most biggest opportunities that any industry within any vertical is going to start seeing. And it's important that we look at it from a data point of view, right? So kind of going a bit deeper, gathering and really utilizing sustainability data, like I said, is quite complex and it's quite time consuming. And this is because the systems that exist within the space of circularity, within the space of sustainability, they are not really designed for operational uses. It's a system that's built in a very single, one-directional way, and it's not easy to change. It's not easy to integrate with other systems, and as a result, ESG or circularity or sustainability has been working in isolation. It hasn't been connected as part of the core functioning of businesses and as part of their core supply chain operation. What we are doing at Kudoti is really simplifying the process of measuring sustainability or circularity by making it really accessible and quite effective for any company of any size to really extract data to understand, like I said, going back to the example of the shirt, what happens to the shirt before we actually get it or before we manufacture it? And more importantly, what happens to it after consumers have used this shirt, right? So do you have full traceability of that whole value chain? And we believe that if a company does, it's much easier to then actually implement really exciting initiatives, of which I have a few case studies here that I'll share in a bit. So what is Kudoti? We are what we essentially say is enterprise resource planning software for sustainability. What that means is we've built a platform that is able to be used as an operational tool, while at the same time sharing insights and reporting analytics that help companies be more circular, that help companies be more sustainable as well. It's a very easy to use platform with two sort of main functionality: the back end, where you can fully customize it, whether you want to sort of track any type of material end to end, from waste all the way to organic. If you want to sort of customize very specific fields, either for investor reporting or for auditing, for regulation, and even just for efficiency and understanding how your business is doing, you're able to use the platform to do that. Like I said, it's easy to customize. I'm not going to go too much into what it really looks like, but I really want to speak about this as well to say, we think we're quite unique, or our positioning is quite unique in a sense that there are a lot of platforms already that are enterprise resource planning systems, like, the likes of
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know if it's just my internet or if everyone might have missed that last point. So if you don't mind just backtracking from when you changed to the slide.
This one?
No, the slide that you were on. So as you were starting your point, we didn't hear you. So if you could just repeat that point that you were making.
Okay.
So that we...
Okay, sure. Maybe I could start here quickly. So I was just saying that, it's quite easy to use and very customizable. You are able to track any type of data point for any type of material in any stage of your process, right? So if you want to sort of understand where your plastic comes from, where your plastic ends, or where your product goes after the platform is built in a very customizable way that helps you track a product post and pre consumer as well. Then I did want to say as well that I don't want to go too much into it, but kind of this is where it looks like, where you're able to sort of set different stages based on how you operate, and also put these different specific KPIs that you want to measure, either for investor relations, for consumers, for being more efficient within your organization. And I think before the connection acted up, I was just on this point to say that we've obviously seen a lot of companies that are already in existence regarding EPR or ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, such as SAP. But these companies are not really built for sustainability or for circularity or to measure anything that's impact driven. In fact, they're very single sort of focused, and it's just operation. They also don't have a lot of flexibility, so it's quite difficult to change a big system that a company might adopt, and they're very expensive. The sustainability platforms that exist, what we've seen is they're very complex, so they're not easy to implement, and they're not operating in real time. And we sort of want to, we see ourselves as just being in the middle of these two fields. This is a case study that we did, which sort of shows you what happens when you have full traceability of your material. So we've worked with Heineken here in South Africa, and Heineken puts millions of bottles into the South African market, and they really don't understand where these bottles end up. And through our platform, we were able to sort of give them full traceability of where the materials are, or these bottles are, who actually collects these bottles, and how do we then bring them back into the value chain. Doing this meant that we had to work with informal waste pickers, with SMEs, with even NGOs found within different communities to sort of bring them on and sort of digitize some of their operations, such that when someone collects a bottle from a household, that's tracked. When that bottle moves to a small business that is looking for these bottles, that's tracked all the way until the bottle comes back into Heineken's supply chain. And obviously the idea would be to do that for as many times as possible, so that bottles that are actually well don't end up in landfills, and we sort of keep them in the loop for as many times as possible. Another quite interesting example is the work we've done with Nestle. It isn't necessarily like a full complete circle, but it does emphasize the importance of sort of using data to really drive impact within communities. And with Nestle, we were working with about 100 to 150 informal waste pickers who in South Africa actually play a really big role. They're responsible for 80 to 90% of all household packaging, and yet they previously were not seen, or rather recognized. So through this project, we were able to train them, sort of empower them with things like, equipment, and provide training for these individuals. And they were able to collect any type of plastic that obviously is manufactured by Nestle, and those plastic actually made bins. So the bin that you see here was actually made from recycled plastic within this very same community. And the idea here was to sort of show that, there's more value in waste than we see, but you can't show that without strong verifiable data, which is really where our platform comes in. I think I'll pause here for now and maybe see if there's any questions so far. But if anyone wants to sort of know more or reach out to me for any specific questions, this is my email.
Thank you so much, Gift, for that wonderful presentation and so many insights. As Gift has said, if you have any questions, to please put them in the chat, not just for Gift, but for any of the speakers that we have. Please feel free to throw any of your questions that you have in the chat. I think for me, what's standing out from your work is just the idea of organizing verifiable data to accelerate circularity. It's an important point. The only question I do have for you, Gift, really quickly before we jump into putting you in a breakout room at some point, is just to hear from you around whether the platform that you have, your app, is usable by local governments, or would there be some modifications that need to be made for that, given that it seems your target market is largely businesses?
Yeah, so it's usable by any type of stakeholder. There's a lot of case studies that I could have shared about how flexible the platform is, but to give you an example, we have a project down in KZN or KwaZulu-Natal, one of the provinces here in South Africa, in the city of Durban. We're working with the eThekwini municipality, where we are actually, through some of the work that they are doing in terms of empowering people that are recycling, we are the ones actually providing visibility of that material, right? Because governments struggle as well. They don't have good data. They actually don't even know where their waste goes, and you know, it's a mess. And for me, a tool like this is a really good opportunity for government to sort of come in, and because by default, government is supposed to report, and they're supposed to know exactly where materials are, what happens, and you know, then mitigate and provide different initiatives to sort of combat this challenge. But right now, they're trying to solve a problem without even fully understanding it, right? So for me, I think the platform is a really good opportunity for government to come in as well and engage, and I'm happy to take the conversation further.
Definitely. I'm also super excited to hear what will emerge from the discussions in your group, mainly because what you're doing responds directly to a need that local governments constantly express a need for, which is how to help them manage data and use data for decision making. So thank you so much, Gift, for that input. We will now go over to our second speaker, who is Elek Plim, who is joining us from Safisana. Elek Plim, please take the floor and introduce yourself, as well as share with us what you do at Safisana, and share perspectives from waste to energy.
Sure. Thank you very much. The name again is Elek Plim Asilevi, the General Manager for Safisana Ghana Limited. It's a great opportunity to share the innovative work Safisana is doing in Ghana, and the major pace-setting role it's playing in exposing circular economy further within our jurisdiction. Can you hear me, please?
We can now hear you. I was just about to ask if everything is all right, but we can definitely hear you.
Good. So thanks again for the opportunity. Though we are pressed with time, I would be able to use this within a few minutes to expose you to the work we do in terms of our circularity. Safisana is a waste to resource plant located in Ghana, specifically at Shama. We were the first waste to resource plant to be established in West Africa. We've been in operation for the past 10 years, and our core mandate has been to collect organic waste from both industry and community and valorize these into useful products such as biogas, bioelectricity, and biofertilizer. How do we do this? We collect organic waste from markets in the form of vegetable and fruit residues, and also from industries such as Nestle, Promasidor, Olam, and Co. And mix with a fecal sludge, that is toilet to be blunt, put it through an anaerobic digestion process to produce biogas, bioelectricity, and biofertilizer. The process is one that goes through a digestion process that everybody knows to be anaerobic. What it means is that the material mix is fed on by organisms in the absence of oxygen. In the process of the feeding, it generates biogas. The biogas is then converted into electricity through the deployment of combined heat and power generators and transported onto the national grid. Now, to be able to perform such a function in Ghana, you should be able to collaborate with government and local authorities. One, the local authorities control waste management within Ghana, and the production of electricity and biogas is regulated by the government, by the national government. So you need to have some sort of collaboration or partnership with these forms of or layers of government. So we have a power purchase agreement with the national government, and we have a waste treatment agreement with the municipality. We also play within the agricultural sector because of the biofertilizer we produce. It is regulated by the Agricultural Ministry and through the PPRSD department that does the regulation in terms of standards. The local community, yes, is a drill down from the national government to the doorstep of the people. So you deal with the community in terms of the collection because they generate the waste, but the local authority regulates the collection and its management. We also have a PPP partnership with the local authority in the establishment of the plant. There was an initial arrangement where the local authority would have to provide land and would have to participate in the ownership of the plant. And it has made it very easy for the plant to run in terms of providing feedstock. Because they are participants or they are collaborators, waste is made available all the time, and the plant is kept running at full throttle with their support. This is just an overview of the kind of impact we make from the production of biogas, bioelectricity, and biofertilizer. 31,000 people every year enjoy clean and improved sanitation because waste is evacuated from the community and they are less exposed to waste, hence reducing the incidence of sanitation-related diseases such as cholera, diarrhea, and malaria. Over 35,000 people per year enjoy a cleaner and living working environment, and that has to do with the industrial waste. The waste that would have landed on the landfills and emits carbon and methane now is treated by Safizana and valorized into very useful products such as the biogas. That goes back to industry to reduce their dependence on fossil. On average, a company that is into food processing uses 145,000 liters of either diesel or residual fuel oil. If sustainable production is the global target, then the debilitating effects of fossil cannot be ignored. So giving back biogas to industry to reduce their dependence on fossil, thereby reducing their carbon footprint, is one of the impacts we are making within the environment and the community. 2,300 people enjoy access to green electricity. In our electricity production mix, Safizana seems to be the only company producing electricity from waste. 63% of the total production of electricity is done through mechanisms that employ the use of fossil. So we have sources that depend on a lot of fossil to generate electricity, and this constitutes 63% of our total production. If we could increase our production in respect of electricity, the nation would depend less on fossil sources and also reduce our carbon footprint. The biofertilizer goes to about 11,700 farmers every year. This improves their yield by minimum of 20% and also reduce their dependence on chemical fertilizers, which are also sources of methane emission. Chemical fertilizers emit nitrous oxide, which is even more potent than the carbon we always discuss. So if they depend a lot on organic sources such as our biofertilizer under the brand name as Asidifo, it will also help mitigate methane and carbon emission in that space. Over 200 people receive income and improve economic livelihood due to the work we do in the community. Directly, we employ about 80 people involved in the day-to-day running, and 130 people come from auxiliary service providers. We engage local SMEs in the form of electricians and mechanics to work on maintenance projects and also retrofitting other equipment. So in a nutshell, we provide both direct and indirect employment to 200 people. Like I said earlier, we are 100% locally managed. What are the biggest challenges we've faced so far? The top on the list, because of the nature of our operations, the entire establishment depends on feedstock. And waste management in Ghana has a high participation of the informal waste sector. The informal waste sector plays a predominant role in waste collection and recycling in Ghana, but it often operates under unregulated and unsafe conditions. Formalizing and integrating the informal sector into circular economic efforts while ensuring compliance and environmental and labor standards remains a challenge. The next is the financial resources. Financing and investment constraints pose barriers to scaling up circular economic projects and innovations in Ghana and for that matter, Africa. Limited access to funding as a result of high costs and unavailability of broad money remains a very major barrier to scaling our projects within Ghana and Africa. Policy implementation and enforcement is also a major challenge, and that is more reason why I am glad to participate in this conference or confab, where you bring together municipalities and private sector to discuss areas of collaborative initiative that will help forge the growth of circularity on the African continent. Despite the existence of policy frameworks, challenges remain in implementing and enforcing regulations related to waste management and recycling. Inconsistent enforcement, lack of monitoring mechanisms, and weak institutional capacity undermine the effectiveness of circular economic policies and initiatives in Ghana and, for that matter, Africa. Behavioral change, like Gift mentioned in his introductory slide, the discussion has gained traction globally, but implementation is still on a low pace. And this can be attributed mostly to lack of will on the part of government and also drilling down, on parallel behavior by indigenous. Changing consumer behavior and fostering a culture of sustainability pose ongoing challenges in Ghana and Africa. Encouraging individuals and businesses to adopt recycling habits, reduce waste regeneration, and embrace circular economy principles require a concerted effort in public education, awareness raising, and behavior change campaigns. And the need to foster collaboration with municipalities is still top on my discussion and in my engagement with national governments. Sufficient approach. What makes sufficient approach the most or the valuable approach in Africa? Africa is widely considered an emerging market. And with this designation, it reflects its potential for economic growth. And in the discussion of economic growth, agriculture sector and industry cannot be overemphasized. From the agriculture perspective, if regenerative agriculture is the global target, then the debilitating effects of chemical fertilizers should not be ignored. The adoption of biofertilizers, which revitalize soil life and improve development of healthy plants, should be widely publicized and mandatory. If not total adoption, there should be combination of biofertilizers now together with chemical fertilizers to reduce total dependence on chemical and hence reducing our carbon footprint as a continent. Industrialization is still at its minimal stage so far as the Western world is concerned. Africa is still behind in terms of industrialization. And if you want to industrialize, the discussion of energy becomes very prominent. Currently, 90 to 95% of plants are powered by fossil. If we adopt biogas, as we produce now, to replace fossil, the continent, in the attempt to industrialize, will reduce its carbon footprint and as well protect the future of its indigents. We are going to industrialize, we are going to produce what we have to eat, we are going to produce what we have to wear. And this will all depend on what? Fossil. If careful plans are not put in place to integrate circular economy into the industrialization plan, the dependence in fossil to power industry will be continuous. Our ability to scale up and promote circularity in energy generation should be top on agenda for every government. And that is why we need to collaborate as a private sector and a public concern. It is very, very important to also note that the problem is a public problem, but the solutions are always a private solution, because governments have always lacked the will and the capacity to invest in private solutions. So if the private sector is investing in solutions, governments should just collaborate and create the conducive environment for the solutions to thrive.
Apologies, do you mind wrapping up in the next minutes, just so that we have some time for discussion and to hear from Laura as well?
Sure.
We can definitely deep dive into any of the slides that you do not cover in the group discussion.
Sure. So the sub-Saharan approach is a holistic one that combines the social and the commercial strategy, combining profit and purpose. We would have to be self-sustaining to be able to make the impact that we are making now. Technology and expertise, yes, we've been in operation for the past over a decade. We've stood the test of time. We've increased our operations from one plant to a second plant, and we hope to do same in other countries in Africa. It's a long-term sustainable solution that will power the future whilst not harming the existing environment. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Clem, for the insights into the work that Safisane does, but also just for getting us a good understanding of the tech solution that you guys are implementing. It's really wonderful to see. And I think for me, what stood out from your presentation is how you have been engaging with the local government in Accra to implement your work. Yes, there have been challenges, but what we love seeing is that you are moving forward and doing work. I see a number of questions that are coming in the chat for you, but I just want to ask our participants to please hold those questions just for a moment. Unfortunately, Gift has something urgent to attend to and cannot join us for the breakout room. So I just wanted to take some time to give him a chance to answer some of the questions that have come up for him. So while we will miss having a deeper discussion with you, Gift, I think we can take just the next 5 minutes for you to answer some of the questions that came up from the chat. I think one of the first ones was from Ken, who says, how have you managed to make recycling profitable against competing conventional products? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so what I've learned through the journey is, you know, it's not enough to just recycle materials and sell them. we've seen that the more you actually convert or you process the materials that you recycle, the more profitable it becomes. It's obviously quite easy to start right now. If I want to, begin an operation for recycling with very little equipment, I could just go and start collecting materials, sort of store them somewhere and then find someone to buy, right? That's more like the standard method. But to maximize profits, once you start developing plastic into something else, then it becomes far more profitable. And we have case studies like that in South Africa, where we work with organizations that are working with the government to provide them with building bricks that are made purely from recycled plastic. We work with organizations in Ghana that are taking plastic using very low tech, just like a pot that they heat it up to the right temperature, it melts the plastic, and they make tiles out of that. They make chairs. Some of them even make shoes, right? So for me, I would say that if you are someone who is an aspiring entrepreneur and you actually want to venture into, recycling or circularity, really think about the whole value chain, not just like one part of it, and think how, as that specific company, as that specific organization, how can you really sort of maximize and position yourself well off, looking at the entire value chain?
A really lovely perspective, and I think it also
I hope
benefits.
that answers the question.
I hope it did. Can in the chats, please do also help us indicate whether you have like any follow-up questions to that. Thank you so much, Gib, for responding to that first question. There was another one that came from Ruth Capon, who says, thank you, Gib, for your presentation, and asks, could you speak to the incentives for the private sector to take on your service?
Yeah, so firstly, I can speak about the lack of incentives or like the disadvantages for not taking up a service like this, right? Firstly, governments are meant to report. Remember that the government is responsible for us consumers, or us households, right? Like the government needs to report back to the general public, and we are by we, I mean, the citizens, we are the ones that hold the government responsible. So firstly, the government's incentive to actually take up our service is visibility. We've done a bit of work with the government in Cape Town, the Western Cape government, the Department of Environmental Affairs, and they've been able to actually confidently say within the city of Cape Town, X amount of materials were collected responsibly and they were disposed of responsibly. And that's a very big thing, because what we see, especially in the African continent, is government just collect materials and then they just throw it in the landfill. In South Africa, we're running out of landfills, right? And the landfill in itself is not this is a solution that was invented centuries ago. It's not a futuristic thing. As time goes by, landfill will eventually fade away. Why? Because landfill cause much harm. I mean, there's studies that show that anyone within a 5-kilometer radius close to a landfill has more chances of getting asthma. They're more likely to be depressed. There's a lot of real life incidents that a landfill has. So the governments that we have been speaking with have luckily been very forward thinking, and they are seeing that with the amount of people sort of growing within South Africa and the broader African continent, just collecting materials from household to dump it somewhere is not the right solution, right? And to move away from that, you need to understand what type of material is being collected. Where is it being collected? What is the frequency of that collection? And also optimization. In South Africa, the government spends millions of rands every single year worth of petrol or logistics, right? Essentially understanding which route they should take to collect materials and stuff like that. So our platform is actually able to help as well optimize those routes to say, within this space, so much people have this type of amount. How do you then sort of optimize your route or your logistics so that you save up a little bit more on your logistics cost? And then the last thing I would say is government needs they understand the importance of this problem because they're the ones that set up the regulation. With regulation comes accountability, and accountability is data, right? So if you don't have the right amount of data, it means that if there's a certain regulation that's put in place, then you will not be able to be compliant with that regulation because you don't have the right amount of data. There's a lot of other incentives that I could really speak about, or like benefits of a government using a technology such as ours. But I think those ones for now are like the main ones.
Thank you so much, Gift. I don't think we have time to answer the last question, but hopefully it's something we can reach out to you about after the session and perhaps get your insights. This is just a question from Ryan Roberts around hearing how municipalities are actually collecting data and how that compares to the Kudoti process. So we can definitely follow up on that later on, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for the wonderful presentation you gave and for the valuable insights that you've shared into the room. I'm sure a lot of our local government officials in here are having the clogs in their minds spinning, and they're like, ooh, this is super interesting. This is something we can try, and probably keen to test out your app or see how they can leverage it for their work. So thank you so much, Gift, and we're looking forward to future engagements with you.
Thank you very much. Have a good one. Sorry, I have to jump off early, everyone, but thanks for having me, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you, Gift. And that leads us well into now our last presentation. Laura is going to share with us about Black Soldier Flies. So without wasting any time, Laura, please introduce yourself as well as share with us the work that you do at the back picture.
Hi, everyone. I am Laura Stanford. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, although we can't yet see your presentation.
Oh, dear.
No, now we can see it.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Stanford. I'm from the Bug Picture and also more recently Loop Pet Food. I have been spending the last 6 years playing with insects in East Africa because I truly believe that the future has 6 legs and that it is insects that are going to enable us to rethink what resilient food systems look like within a context of circular economy. My favorite insect is the black soldier fly larvae, but I've also played with desert locusts, with bees. I've played with on the research side of things, training in different scales. But essentially my passion lies with bugs because I think that they are a very undervalued animal that can create a lot of solutions to the problems that we're facing. But first, let's have a quick look at what are insects and why are they as magnificent as they are. So firstly, I think people have been...
I think you might already be sharing your slides or changing them. We could only see the first one. And do you mind perhaps putting it in full screen?
Let me start again.
No problem.
I'm just gonna do this guy. So you didn't see this one then?
No.
Okay.
So maybe something that can help is when you're sharing the screen, do you mind perhaps just sharing your desktop, and that way we'll be able to see the full screen version of it rather than just...
Yeah, so that's what I did this time.
Oh no, we still can't see it.
Still can't see it.
No. Screen now. Hopefully we'll be able to screen. Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool. So this is these are some of the things that I've done that I mentioned there. I think that bugs are just super cool. I think that They're just these wonderful little creatures. We've got like hundreds of millions of them around the planet, and it's about how do we unleash some of their additional value in order to create some of the solutions that we need. So we've got 644 edible insects on this planet that people have been eating for centuries. In the Bible, there's scripture about people eating the desert locusts when the plagues came. We've seen Insaneni, which is in Uganda, which is still eaten today. And so there are so many options available to us, and it's about unlocking and reminding ourselves and our food systems that those insects are there and that they can be farmed, which is stated here. 18 insects can be commercially farmed. And so I'm just going to touch on this a bit. So unlike Safisana and Kudoti, I'm sort of going to look a bit more at the larger industry as opposed to specifically our work, because we're a little bit agnostic. We do anything that is cool about insects, from research to farming to unlocking new circularity trends. But I'll sort of touch on that in a minute. But if we look at our African continent and what do we need to solve for, I think one of the things that is most pressing for this conversation is that organic waste management. And we're very fortunate in some regards because so much of our waste is organic, unlike other parts of the world, which offer a lot of opportunity for us to upcycle. But I think we also need to take a minute to consider what is actually waste, because in a true circular system, that waste only happens at the very, very end of the line. And actually, up until that point, it has a piece and a place in the system. And I think this is what conversations like this are so important at doing, especially for people who aren't working in the circular space, is let's take a minute to look at a system and figure out what is actually waste and is at the end of its life, and what still has value that can be used in another system. And for us bug lovers, that is that organic waste. So black soldier fly larvae consume organic waste, pretty much any organic waste. So if it is possible to divert organic waste from landfill, that is no longer considered waste, but rather it is feedstock for insects that are going to create a novel, sustainable alternative protein source to feed animals, with a byproduct of really beautiful organic biofertilizer called frass. And I think this definition of waste is worth sort of just like having at the back of your mind and allowing it to tickle a little bit there. But that organic waste is an important one. The other thing which we sort of put together here, and it was touched on by other speakers, is that we're facing immense population growth in Africa, and we need to think about how we're going to feed people in a responsible way and an affordable way into the future, using sustainable farming techniques that are going to make our soils richer, so that as our generations continue to roll through our soils, we can continue to feed them. And then we can have diets that are really nutrient dense without destroying the planet. And this all sort of comes together for me, obviously, bug lover, it all comes under bugs, but this is also a larger system, which is how all of these different solutions, these circular solutions, need to fit together and complement each other in order to create a really, really successful system to solve these problems. And so here we've got some examples of different scales of black soldier fly larvae farming, because for the purposes of circularity, this is where the conversation goes. And on the right, we've got I'll call it futuristic, but it's actually a real facility in Europe where they are vertically farming black soldier fly larvae. And I think this is an important visual because there are also people doing this in Cape Town. And that's what the future of waste management, organic waste management, can look like. And that is mass conversion of organic waste into the outputs that the planet really needs, which is that protein and that fertilizer. On the bottom left, you've got a home kit, which the bug picture designed and has been rolled out in Nakuru, which is in Kenya, and in Changwali, which is a refugee settlement in Uganda. And the idea here is that the success of insect farming looks different in different contexts, and both can
Sorry,
be.
Laura. Apologies
Yeah.
to have you pause. We just have an announcement for the interpreter to please double check that you're in the right room. The team can hear you in the English channel. I'm all sorted. You can go ahead, Laura. It was just
So
for
that's
the
not for me, that's for someone else.
No, not for
Okay.
you, it's for interpreters.
Yeah, so I think just when it comes to insect farming, there's been a lot of concerns, and there's been a lot of statements about what does success look like and at what scale do these things work. And on the right, you've got mass scale, which is solving for a landfill problem, right? And that organic waste is being turned into something really sophisticated outputs for the animal feed sector, for agricultural sector. On the bottom left, you've got a full life cycle kit, which is used by an individual, either a smallholder or a refugee, from our projects that we've run, and they are farming full life cycle on a very small scale, but that scale is enabling them to feed their chickens for the first time, so they can now rely on an egg from a chicken every single day. And they have that natural organic fertilizer that comes out on the other side, which then gives them the agricultural food that they want, and they can get more out of their soil. And so in the middle there, you've got a lady who is sorting her bugs, which she has farmed, and it has enabled her to have a small business, which is a very successful mechanism for her to improve her livelihood. And so both systems work for insect farming. They look incredibly different, but it's still a success. And in the top there, I threw in a dog because I think that there is also there's also a very interesting concept here, which is sometimes overseen, where you have new innovation, which is to a certain degree still insect farming. If we put it bluntly, this is still a very new industry, and it's probably where the solar industry was 10 years ago. And there still needs to be a lot of investment in research. There needs to be a lot of private entrepreneurial spirit in order to move it forward, because those, it's on our entrepreneurs and our innovators who are our risk takers. But about 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, we launched Loop Pet Food. And the thinking behind that was that we wanted to provide people with a premium product, insect-based, so that they could afford to look after their pets and look after the planet at the same time. What we have learned through that journey is that it's not just the insects we throw in there, but it is also vegetables from smallholder farmers that would not have otherwise found its way to the market. So rescue vegetables, what we call in Kenya, they're called wonky vegetables in the UK, but those vegetables are going in there. And that means that there is also a way for that to be part of that circular journey, and to redefine that concept of waste once again, to turn it into something more, to give it a new life. But I think that's everything on here. And then I thought I'd just touch here, I'd end here. I'll also add some thoughts here, but so that people can see that insect farming is not a new concept on this continent. This list is definitely not complete. There are definitely more players that I may not have included here. On this list, we've got cricket farmers, we've got palm weevil farmers, most are operating in the black soldier fly larvae world. But these are the players that are moving the industry forward on our continent and moving that circular economy agenda forward. And when I look at what it means for cities, because I know that this is part of this conversation, is how do we make our cities smarter and more sustainable, more circular? Things that come to mind is, and again, I'm going to say it, we need to rethink what waste is. We need to create an enabling environment for entrepreneurs, because it is the entrepreneurs who take research, put money behind it, and take it into the private sector to test these ideas. And it is really important that if those entrepreneurs and those innovators are doing no harm, we need to find ways to support them. And it doesn't have to be through investment, because I know that's what all entrepreneurs ask for. It's what I always ask for. But if we can have policy that supports them. So if I take the example of a small household kit and that person wants to collect more waste so that they could scale their operation, we need to make sure that local government isn't going to come in and say, well, that's not okay. You're not allowed to do this. You don't have a waste permit. You don't have a this. You don't have a that. And so it's about creating that enabling environment. For me, I really believe in the power of inspiration. And I think that this is where so much of this of these circular ideas have to start, is that people need to be inspired. And in many cases, people are only inspired when they see it, what they need to look at. And so I think it's about inspiring people to change, so that you can, one individual by one individual, create an army of climate warriors who are interested in this and who are doing their small bit towards a more circular existence on this planet. I think that there is a really important element here, that every context is different. And so when you're farming black soldier fly larvae on a massive commercial scale with in a high-tech setting, that context is very specific, and there is policy and there is investment and there is very specific things around that. But if you're Wanja who lives in Nakuru and you want to run a household kit, that context is also very specific and it's also very important. And so those contexts become very important, and solutions should be context specific, and we should also be very open to understanding what those contexts are, as opposed to trying to copy and paste things across just because that's the convenient way of scaling something. Something that we've experienced on a massive, sort of in a massive way in the insect industry in Kenya.
I have to do this again, Laura. Just another announcement for the interpreter. James, you are in the wrong channel. Could you please switch back to French? Back to you, Laura. You can carry on, Laura.
Yeah, it's basically the end. I just wanted to say one of the other things that we're very passionate about it in both sort of settings that I work in is that we need to blow information open. And so what you see is that research takes us to a very specific point, and that point is very academic, and it hasn't sort of like put its toes over the line of what it looks like to commercialize. And you've got a lot of brave people who are doing that first step from academics into private sector, and those people are very, very much alone when it comes to accessible information. And I think that there is a huge role that we can play in blowing open the information around circularity, around how you practically do it at different scales. Just open it up, because the opportunity is immense. We don't need to try and look after our little corner of the market because it might disappear. It's not going to go anywhere. There is so much beautiful waste available, and we need to make sure that we use as much as possible. And so that's what I just believe, is that we need more supportive policies. We need to look at context specifics. We need to inspire people, and we need to blow information open and bring all of these solutions together to create true sort of circularity and complementary solutions. And that's me.
Thank you so much, Laura. Such wonderful insights that you've shared. And I think just highlighting what you've said, number one, the starting point of waste, like what do we perceive as waste? And if we can change that initial mindset, it addresses all these other pieces that you've been speaking around. But also just another one, I know with the cities that we've been engaging with through the GAP Fund, a key question that we're trying to resolve is how do we address behavior change in cities? And it's not just about like how people change how they dispose of waste. It's also about how people view things such as this, such as black soldier flies, and the idea that your pet food could come from black soldier fly larvae. So that's a really important point to share, and just the power of inspiration and the value of these engagements. What we're going to do right now is all these questions that you have, we're going to go into breakout rooms just now so that we can engage further with our two entrepreneurs, Laura as well as Alec Plim. So Luca is going to put you in a breakout room. You will either be with myself or with Amina and Kira, where you will be discussing with me, Black Soldier Fly farming, or with Amina and Kira on waste to energy. So we're just going to allow a minute or so for Luca to get ready and open the breakout rooms, and we'll carry on with our discussions for about 15 minutes. He is. The breakout rooms are opening. All the questions that you put in the chat, please capture them.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Amina. Yeah, all good.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So we have Ilklum with us here from Safisana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you all for being here today with us, and it's a pleasure to have you, Ilklum, with us, and thank you so much for the valuable presentation. It was very insightful.
Thanks
So
for the feedback.
thank you so much. So I would like to start by inviting the participants, if anyone wants to ask you anything based on the presentation you provided. Because we already had some questions before. Yeah, so we have Nadiaja. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but can you please go ahead?
Hello.
So,
Bonjour.
bonjour.
Oui, vous m'entendez? Je peux intervenir?
Oui, bien sûr.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. Je salue tout le monde et les présentateurs aussi. Moi, je m'appelle Ndiagafal, je travaille pour la ville de Pékin, qui est une banlieue de la capitale Dakar au Sénégal. C'est juste une question pour le présentateur ghanéen Elik Plim, excusez-moi. Qui a un peu présenté un peu un projet de valorisation des déchets provenant des marchés. Nous avons un peu des similitudes parce que notre ville également donc concentre 3 à 4 marchés d'intérêt national qui donc produit énormément de déchets. Et on avait un projet de gestion des déchets. Donc, ce que je voulais savoir, comment le montage a été fait, parce qu'il y a des partenaires, il y a la collectivité territoriale, mais je pense qu'il y a 2 ministères, le ministère de l'énergie et un autre ministère. Comment le partenariat ça s'est établi, qui a été à l'initiative, et après comment également ces différents partenaires sont retrouvés pour gérer ce projet. Quelle a été en quelque sorte la responsabilité de la collectivité territoriale? Est-ce que la collectivité territoriale a participé financièrement au montage du projet?
Pardon, Nidia, parce que je veux est-ce que vous nous entendez? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but there is a problem with the interpretation, right?
Yeah, we got
Yeah.
everything in French, yeah.
Oui, maintenant, on peut vous entendre. D'accord. D'accord, ok. Nadia, est-ce que vous pouvez, pardon, dire encore une fois votre question?
Oui, excusez-moi, d'accord. Oui, en fait, je voulais dire pour, en ce qui concerne le projet de biogaz qu'a présenté Eleclim, je voudrais moi savoir un peu quel a été le type de montage, quel a été réellement le rôle de la collectivité territoriale, quel a été son engagement financier et technique. Et maintenant, à la réalisation du projet, quel a été les bénéfices pour la collectivité et quel est le rôle que joue la collectivité après la mise en œuvre de ce projet, après la réalisation du projet, avant et après, quel est le rôle de la collectivité territoriale. Merci.
So, is this the question? That's it? So we are here in the English. No, I think you're speaking in the English.
So, Ellie Klim here again. We heard the question, but it was still in French.
So, Eliklim, did you hear the English translation?
No, nothing came in English. Did you hear me?
Electrin, yes, I hear you in the English channel. I think we're just waiting for the interpretation to be speaking here.
Okay.
I think, sorry, just to come in, I'm pretty sure that I heard at least part of the interpretation. I believe the question was about what the impact was on communities in relation to the biogas project. I'm not sure if anyone else got the interpretation. Yeah.
So what the impact is as regards the biogas is that waste that would have ended in the community is evacuated and converted into biogas. So the community is not exposed to that stream of waste, therefore culminating in clean environment and reduce health risk. For instance, if the farmer or the market woman leaves the waste within the community, that would have generated some exposure to the indigents. But once we collect and treat it into biogas, they have an inbound impact that culminates in health and cleaner environment. So this is how they benefit. And it's the same, in addition to that, it's the same biogas that is converted into electricity and consumed by the community. So it's bioelectricity because it came from biogas, but goes to serve the community that generated the waste. So this is a closed loop biogas generating system that evacuates waste and serves the people with electricity and also reduce the incidence of sanitation related diseases. Did you hear me?
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So do we have other questions from the participants? Please, if you have a question, raise your hand. Kira?
Hi, I suppose I'm not technically a participant, but I was curious, Erik Plim, what the maybe I missed this in your presentation, but what the how you're using energy storage? What processes are you using for storing the energy from the biogas, or are you transporting it? What are the mechanisms in place for?
So the energy we produce is fed directly onto the national grid and distributed by the government through the Electricity Company of Ghana to the end user. So we do not store. And the transportation to the grid is done by lines, electric lines, underground onto the national grid.
Okay, thank you. Is there any conversation happening about green hydrogen or any other elements? I know that that's a common engagement with the biogas field, is developing green hydrogen.
Considerations have been made in that regard, but the discussions are not a full throttle yet. But I think in the future that will come up. But as it is now, at the consideration stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I would also like to ask Erik Plim to share your experience. Sorry for the interpreter. Can you please change the channel? Because you are speaking in the English channel now. Okay. I would like to ask you, Erik Plim, to share your experience in starting your initiative. So how did you obtain support from local governments? If you can please speak about this a bit in detail.
Yeah. So the support we've had with governments, and for that matter, local governments, has been through the collaboration in sourcing funds. The initial fund that set up the plant was from AFDB, and it would have only come to us through a public partnership. So local government, through the Ashama Municipal Assembly, facilitated that inflow that set up the fund. And the land on which we operate was provided by the local government. And I think it's a standard practice within our jurisdiction to have land provided by the government when we want to set up business in Ghana. So that is how we benefited from collaboration with the local government. Then the operationalization of the plant is much based on the feedstock. So if the waste is not available, the plant will not run. The local government is in charge of waste management within Ghana. So regulation of waste and collection practices is done by the local government. So whilst they do that, they make the waste available for the plant to run. So these are basically how we benefit from collaboration with government. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's really informative. I want also to check again if any of the participants have any questions. I don't see any raised hands. Kira, please let me know if someone is raising their hands and I can see it.
No, I don't see anything from my end.
Okay. Do you have any questions for
no direct questions, I suppose, that weren't covered in the interview, but I guess yeah, maybe just what some of the, if there are additional challenges that we haven't spoken about that you came across in the process of setting up this system?
So I think I lost you along the line, but if I could just recap what I heard, what are some of the challenges we faced outside what we discussed? Was that it?
Yeah, if there's just anything further on, well, we have to leave in about a minute, but if there's any further challenges that you came across in terms of setting up the organization or financing or, you know, anything significant worth
Yes,
chatting.
yes. So the chief among some of the other ones we faced was understanding of the bottom line strategy. The fact that the project will not start making financial profit immediately. And that did not augur well with investors. They want to see immediate financial profit, ignoring the social impact or the environmental impact that would have brought to bear. So the discussion now has to be, what do we want to see as a community in the circular economy? What do we want to see? How do we define profit? Do we have social profit? Do we have financial profit? How do we start discussing or selling the model to investors? Should we discuss environmental profit over financial profit, or should we balance the two? These were some of the questions we needed to some of the problems we needed to face in terms of the initial setup. Yeah.
And are you profitable now?
Yes, we are profitable at the operational level, and projections with expanding the model to properly compress biogas and sell to industry will put us as a positive, will put us at a positive EBITDA. So maybe if I could drill down into that, the model now only converts the biogas into electricity. We are producing more biogas and flaring. We want to recapture that or bottle it and send back to industry to power their boilers, especially the food processing industries. Discussions are far advanced with Diageo Guinness to offtake our biogas to power their boilers. Barry Calico is also ready to offtake.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Eric. I think the rest of the team is here now, so we'll continue with the rest of our discussions. Thank you.
All right, sure.
Thank you so much. I'm really interested to hear what has emerged from this breakout room. I know Laura got cut off right at that last point in our discussion, but I will try and capture what we discussed, and hopefully if there's a minute or so, we can finish that thought. But perhaps you can start with the group that was here in the main plenary. I heard you, Kira, speaking, so I don't know if you or Amina will be giving the report back. In just about 2 minutes, are you able to share with us what the key insights were that came from your discussion on biogas?
Yeah, of course. I'll give a quick summary, and hopefully if I miss anything, Amina can jump in. But yeah, we spoke about essentially what the community impact was, looking at, or touching on rather, how, you know, the value of having like a direct gathering of the waste from the community and making that kind of circular connection within that space and within the community is already a significant impact. We spoke a little bit about the potential of green hydrogen in the future. And very loosely, they have loose ideas and plans about setting that in place. But yeah, just about the potential benefits of setting up that system. And then, as you heard in the tail end there, just I think a broader conversation that I think is valuable across anything in the circular economy. But Eric Krim was just saying that investors are pretty hesitant to buy into something that doesn't have like a clear line to profit. And so we should be having a conversation about kind of diversifying the way we speak about profit. Maybe we should speak about social profit or environmental profit as a way of communicating what that is. It shouldn't just be about money. But then I think everyone was hearing at the end there, they are profitable financially, which is incredible. And there are ways to kind of make that even diversify those streams of profit as well through transporting the biogas and through using it in other avenues as well.
Nice. Thank you so much, Kira, and everyone who was in that room having the discussion. I think similar conversations might have been happening between the two groups on our end. The second point that you shared around the broader conversation being needed for investors and how we view these technologies is definitely something that could turn into a follow-up session. Very key from our discussion was around like the mainstreaming of black soldier fly farming as an opportunity. Right now, we have a lot of regulation and red tape in some countries and in others, not as much, but guidance is needed on how we take on these technologies, how we incentivize people who are acting in the space to encourage them to take on these opportunities. Something Laura ended our conversation with was the need for inspiring other people to take action. That's the only way we get greater buy-in and insight for these pieces of work. Our discussion in the Black Soldier Fly room mainly centered around policy perspectives and what we do to get those on board. We got to hear about the perspectives from Kenya as well as the perspectives from South Africa on what regulations exist for taking on black soldier fly farming, and perhaps in a report back after this we'll be able to share with you what the key details were regarding that. I would like to pause here to quickly give our speakers just 1 minute to share with us a quick reflection from your thoughts, either about the work that you presented and the discussions that we had, or from what you heard from other speakers. We can start with Alec Klim and then we will end with Laura. Please go ahead, Klim, and feel free to turn on your video if you're able to now so that we can see you.
Yeah, I'm able to do that, but the internet is unstable. That's why I keep putting it off. So I think it's been a fruitful engagement so far, and the discussion around circular economy is relevant as we aim to become an industrialized continent. It is very useful to say that data cannot be overemphasized in this approach. How much do we generate as waste? How much do we convert? And how does it impact the environment? And that is why I enjoyed the insights given by Gift. I realized that the insect farming is quite similar to what we are doing here in terms of the organics and what the outcome of that process is. And I would want to state that the problems within Africa as it relates to waste and circular economy is beyond the individual mandate of one company or the private sector. Collaboration in this regard is very relevant in what establishing initiatives that further propel the discussion around circular economy. I am very keen on discussing how we can progress from this platform and collaborating amongst us to further drive change so far as this discussion is concerned. And I think it's a good insight that I've had so far. However, let me pose a question that did not really come up in the discussion, but I read in the concept note. The GAP fund and the discussions around it and its administration, how does it relate to we, the speakers or the private sector, who needs some support in terms of expansion.
So much, Alec Plim. I hope I'm able to answer your question quite quickly. And for everyone else that's still in the room, please bear with us and please stay with us for another 2 to 3 minutes, just so that we can nicely wrap up the conversation. Regarding the opportunities from a financing perspective, I think that's one that I will reach out to the rest of the team on, and we can get back to you around how we can, or on what opportunities do exist, or if not, how we can then connect you with the cities that we are engaging with to perhaps see what opportunities exist there and whether there's interest and appetite from the cities to engage with you. For all the other cities that have been able to join us today, please do reach out to our speakers if you would like to learn more and see whether there are opportunities to collaborate. That's the purpose of today's session, is to facilitate those connections. So feel free to do that. And the points that you shared are very pertinent. Thank you so much for highlighting that this conversation is key around circular economy. Like Laura said in her presentation in our breakout room, we need to have these conversations if we're going to mainstream these ideas. And the problems of Africa go beyond just one organization. The work that you showed really represents that. Yes, you are moving, but a lot of what you're doing has come from that back and forth between you and the municipality there in Accra. So collaboration is important, and the quicker we can learn how to better collaborate with each other, the better. I will pause here and hand over to Laura to please give us your closing reflections.
Yeah, I think that it was a really cool session. I loved learning about what you're doing in Ghana. I loved what Gift was talking about on data, because I do think that data is often overlooked. But unfortunately, big punchy numbers is what a lot of decision makers need in order to be compelled to change and to move things forward. I think that we are in a very unique situation where the private sector is pushing these ideas forward, but essentially doing the work of the public sector. But the public sector is not able to move as fast as we are, and to innovate and to pivot and do all of these things. And so it is the importance of the private sector to pioneer these changes, doing it in a profitable way, yes, because that's the prerogative of the private sector. But it is that, how do we work together as private sector to make these changes, to move the needle forward, but then make sure at the same time, to Gift's point, we've got big punchy numbers so that policymakers can really hear what we're saying and know that we're not joking around, and that we need their support.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Ellen. Wonderful insights that you shared. I would just like to say thank you to all the participants for the wonderful questions that you had. I know we haven't been able to get all the questions, and I can see Evelyn's burning questions. So if Ellen Plim, you're able to respond to that one, given that it's in the biogas space, we can take a minute right after for you to respond, or you can quickly give Evelyn a response in the chat. I'm sure all of us could benefit from the answer that you would give there. But I just want to thank everyone so much for your active participation in today's session, for the wonderful insights that you've shared, for embracing the work that entrepreneurs have been able to share. I implore you to go onto their pages and learn more about the work that they're doing. Just from going onto the Bug Pictures YouTube page, there's a lot of information in there and wonderful work that they're doing. I've been connected with Luke Pet Food and hadn't realized the connection right here. So wonderful work that you're doing, Laura, and it's super inspiring, and I hope everyone here can learn from that. Feel free to connect with our speakers if you're already connected with them on various platforms like LinkedIn, but reach out to myself and my team if you would like us to connect you to either one of them. Thank you very much, everyone. And we can officially close the session here, but we'll keep the room open in case you want to continue having a 2-minute conversation. But otherwise, thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of the Rise Africa Festival.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For those that are still in the room and haven't yet dropped off, there is a link to a survey in the chat. It will only take you about 5 minutes to respond to it. So please do click on it and give our team some feedback around the Rise Africa Action Festival. Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's lovely seeing you in the session as well. And we're glad you attended too.